Hey, how are you doing, Naveen?
Can you hear me?
I do. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can. I can.
Excellent. So I wanted to share one quick update after the email thread from last time. The team from Epic said this was kind of a UI bug or a UX bug that was
Yeah.
preventing that will not register message from coming up, and they said it was fixed. And I just checked in a moment ago to our demo app that we had tried to register last time, and so I didn't touch any of the settings on it, but I just scrolled down to the bottom of the screen here, and this is what we were hoping for the last time around. So,
yes.
It seems like maybe there are more automated tests that could be in place here to make sure that there's not a regression. But in the absence of that, at least it does seem to be working now.
Go back to that screen for a moment, Josh.
Yeah, for sure. Let me just open up the screen share again. So yeah, on this screen here.
Yeah, and scroll up a little bit. And choose all of these. Choose all the available APIs.
Yeah. So let me see if I can do it this way. Let me do R4 just to focus on the current kind of regulated APIs, and let's just look at this R4 search APIs. So this is part of the read access, and so like if I pick, let's say this set, first one's on the screen here. I think this is still going to say will. Nope. See, something that I picked there was not part of the US core data set. And this is where just having an easy button to say, just give me the things I'm allowed to have would be nice. But based on what I know about this space, I'm guessing that this practitioner stuff, I don't necessarily get to search for practitioners as part of US core. I can only see that patient's record. So that didn't seem to quite do it.
So you can't do, I guess you may not be able to do patient search either.
So yeah, maybe I'm only allowed to see the one patient that's in context, but no. So this is fun. So maybe it's the difference between problems and encounter diagnoses under conditions. That's one issue here is conditions of type encounter diagnosis are for whatever reason not part of this core data set yet.
And what does that return? Conditions?
It's a great question. So it's not part of the US core data set. So what it returns is kind of whatever Epic says it returns, because it's beyond the defined core data set. But what they say for it, for condition encounter diagnosis, is condition encounter diagnosis R4. This is what we were looking at here. It returns diagnosis data from the patient's chart, including any data found in the patient's diagnoses across all encounters. So it's not totally clear when this encounter diagnosis category will be used. That's sort of as much documentation as you get on that one.
That's right. I think that's why this is probably still going to be a challenge, because you have to work with each vendor, get these kinds of details.
So I would look at it the other way around. What I would say is the core data set is really the only thing that you should expect when you're connecting to these EHRs. And over time, that core data set is going to grow. But you can already get a sense of how it's expanding. I think just yesterday or the day before, the ONC announced the definitions in US CDI version 3.
Yep.
And so like these are expanding year over year. So I wouldn't actually think about trying to chase down these differences vendor by vendor, because it's going to be an impossible task. But the overall process that's marching along at the national level is to just keep growing that core data set. I think it's going to be a lot more sustainable.
Yeah, understood. And stay on that other screen again.
I'll open that one back up.
Yeah.
So one of the things they've added, for example, that I think is going to be very useful is medication fulfillment status. That's one of the items in US CDI version 3 that just came out.
Got it.
So like that's a new data element, fill status.
Yeah. But go to that screen for registering the app again.
On the Epic site.
On the Epic site, right. And so remind me, what was the confidential client stuff?
So this comes down to the architecture of the application that you're building. If you are building a server-side web application that can maintain secrets server-side, that's considered a confidential client. And This will allow you to get persistent access if you need it. So if a patient approves, your app can stay connected to their record even when the patient is not online. So you can continue to check in and see updates if the patient allows it.
Got it. And and you said the patient must allow that, right?
Yeah, it's part of the approval screen when a patient is asked to whether they want to share their data with an app. If the app requests persistent access, then the patient has a choice. Do you want to give this app persistent access or just a short term?
Got it. Understood. Got it. And how does that change the automatic download of the client?
Well, so that's that in the automatic download concept is sort of something that only exists in this Epic portal. It's Epic's kind of solution to managing app registration at scale. And so when you choose an app that is going to be a confidential client, that means it's going to get a secret that it can use to authenticate to each site. And so essentially that's what the download list is. It's a list of all the sites and the secret that you should use to authenticate to each one.
Understood. But when you do that, when you say, is this app a confidential, and so you say yes, does it change the will or will not on the bottom?
It shouldn't, no. They're required to support persistent access for confidential clients as part of this free patient API.
Understood. Got it. Understood. So let me do this. Actually, the issues or the questions that I had were on the documentation screen, the link for which you had sent to me. You remember that email that you got from the Epic team?
Yeah.
And in that Epic team, they said that, hey, clients that meet the criterion for automatic distribution continue to be automatically distributed per the typical conditions described in this document. Can you go to that link? I have it on my computer screen. I don't have it here. I had questions on that. That's where I struggled a little bit because some things were just not clear to me that.
Yeah, and so I will open this up. I think I've got the right page here, and I will say, this is very confusing language to my mind. I'm not always able to understand everything that this page is saying.
Right.
So these are questions in some sense for Epic, but I could help you at least understand to the level that I understand.
Yeah. So that's what I had. I was a little bit confused. I thought you might understand it better. So, for example, when it talks about client IDs for USCDI apps, so I don't know what it means to say. First and foremost, I don't know what it means to say. Is created through Epic on FHIR. I don't know what that means.
So what they mean here is registered through this kind of screen on the FHIR.epic.com domain. Somebody who goes to the build apps tab and then chooses to create a new app. They mean this process. And the reason they call that out is that individual Epic sites can also configure their own apps that don't come from the centralized Epic managed portal. They can, register an app that just runs at one site.
Yeah, got it. And then, the fourth bullet there, it says is patient facing. Yes, but it does allow for persistent apps, as we just saw, right?
Yes.
So that should be okay. Now, the next one, it says does not use refresh tokens or uses refresh tokens and has a client secret uploaded by the vendor for that community member. So I went down I chased that link. So if you chase that link for a moment.
Yeah, I'm going to open this in a new tab if that works. And the word vendor here is quite confusing. I think that word might refer to the application developer.
That's right. That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
So let's see. Provision. Yeah, so this is a screen that we looked at briefly on the last call.
But they don't have a link to that screen here, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I was trying to look for that screen. I saw everything here, but it doesn't have that link to the screen where you generate the actual client secret.
Yeah. So the reason is, at least I think the reason is that screen only exists in the context of an app. So if I've got 12 apps, I have 12 versions of that screen here, and it's the screen that I can get to by clicking review and manage next to one of those apps.
Oh, I see.
And
so go back. Let's do that for just a moment.
Yeah, let me do it for. I think this one is registered as a confidential client, and this website sometimes just pauses for a long time. Okay, there it goes. So you can see for each of these sites, the idea is that as an app developer, I would come in here and somehow, maybe because I've already registered this app, I don't have the ability to change these keys, or maybe I chose a bad example of an app to see this in. There's a fun error that we're getting when we hit the back button.
Yeah.
I mean, none of this is surprising to me. This is, these are the kinds of errors that kind of happen on this site. And it looks like, for me at least, the whole site is broken right now. You can try reloading it on your end. It might be an issue with my cookies or my session, or it might be a global issue.
Yeah. So let's go back to that that original screen again. Yeah, this one. So basically, what they're saying is that we use that screen that you just showed us.
Yep.
And there we request, that the client secret be uploaded. That is the screen on which we find a way to upload the client secret for that community member, right?
So that is correct as far as I understand. But what I will say is, even if this page was loading for us instead of returning an error, okay, now it's back. Even if this was loading, there's a real usability problem here. And that is, from a developer's perspective. Right, I'm trying to find an example of an app that I have, which is in a state that allows me to actually register one of these secrets. Let's try this one. Okay, so if I was trying to use this to manage keys, there's 500 sites in this list approximately, and the only way to the only way to get 500 different client secrets associated with these 500 sites right now is to go into these rows in this table on this website one by one, click a button, choose these options, generate a secret, and then hit that button and then confirm it, and then do that 500 times.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah.
And so obviously that's not usable. That's not a real story. But it kind of meets the requirements.
Yes.
It meets the regulatory requirements because it provides a process. But what I will point out is a much more plausible scaling story, which is that Epic has been building support for asymmetric client authentication. That's a feature that we added in the latest version of the Smart Spec, so that instead of needing a different secret for every one of 500 sites, you can authenticate with a public-private key pair. And that same public key portion of the key pair can be used by all of the different sites you want to connect to. So Epic has this documented, I think, as part of, maybe that's part of their OAuth tutorial. Let's see if that's where this lives. So if I search this page for things like JSON web key, they have some information about how to register an app using a client secret, and then they have information about, let's see, confidential asymmetric apps. And so this is probably a better direction. I haven't actually registered an app with Epic using this confidential asymmetric profile. It's relatively new in terms of what they've built support for, but my hope is that is going to be a much more realistic story about how to get 500 endpoints registered for your app.
Understood. And why do you think they chose a public key, private key mechanism to solve the problem of individual client secrets?
There's
what does that really do?
Yeah, there's a couple points here. So one is at the level of the standards.
Or is it like they're trying to generate a symmetric key for communication between the two, much like as it happens in the SSL or the TLS protocols?
Yeah. So I mean, part of this is not an Epic decision. Part of this is work we've done as the standards community on better patterns for app registration and for app authentication. And so in the latest version of the Smart Spec, we document and prefer this kind of asymmetric authentication. And there's a couple of real benefits to this asymmetric authentication in general. One is your secret doesn't have to go out over the wire. So if you're dealing with some kind of a attacker in the middle scenario, you're not sending them your secret every time you authenticate. So that's a real benefit. And the other is that as a client, this protocol allows you to rotate your own keys. So maybe you just have a policy that says every 6 months or every year, we're going to rotate out our key. And instead of having to go back into an EHR portal and click a million buttons, you can just host your key set at a well-known URL. And anytime you add a new key or deprecate an old key, you can update that all on your own. So those are some of the reasons that we added this capability.
Then you upload your own public key over to Epic somehow?
Well, to any vendor that you want to register with, right? If we're thinking about the standard, the standard says you can register either a key set or a key set URL. And that key set URL is very flexible because it basically says, here's where my keys live on the web. Anytime I need to change the keys, I could just change this website.
Understood.
That's sort of why we built some of this into the standard. And then Epic was particularly interested in adopting this because of the distribution model that Epic has for their customers. Each one of Epic's customers, or at least many of their customers, run their own infrastructure. And so Epic doesn't want to know an app's secret because that could allow Epic to impersonate the app talking to a customer. And they don't want customer A to know the secret that customer B would use because that would allow customer A to impersonate the app talking to customer B. So it was very important for Epic to design a scheme that kept all of these secrets partitioned in the right way.
Understood. Got it. That's great. Go back to that original screen again where we were following through on the client ID distribution.
I think it's going to be this one. If it, do you mean the documentation screen or the registration?
I think whatever that main documentation screen was.
This one.
That we were on. Yes, this one. So let's keep going down. So it talks about, distribution using US CDI.
Version 1. Yeah.
And then they talk, the next is the automatic client ID distribution for apps using CCDS.
Well, yeah, so there's a kind of historical perspective here. Since 2010, we had sort of 3 rounds of meaningful use incentives for EHRs. And so meaningful use 3 was kind of the 2015 era version of document-based access. And so I wouldn't worry about this today. It's effectively supplanted by the US CDI.
I see. So the idea is to just focus on the US CDI, right?
Yeah, you can see
this. And go keep scrolling down to the next thing, which is about pairs. Yeah, the pair apps. And so are you saying that Epic is also building systems that the pairs are using to distribute explanation of benefits details?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that question, but I mean, Epic certainly does have software that's used by healthcare payers as well as providers. But this particular section of the website is about apps that are meeting CMS payer requirements.
That's right. Yeah. And so and this is very interesting. So you remember you gave me that list of payers that support access? Yeah. And I'm wondering whether some of those payers actually use Epic. How can I figure that out?
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, other than looking through that list of endpoint URLs from the payer directory and seeing if any of them mention Epic.
I see. And it does say that it says users only explanation of benefits. So it looks like there is a class of APIs for just the explanation of benefits. Are you familiar whether the FHIR interface has something that is specific to explanation of benefits and payers?
Yeah, absolutely. So in general, the FHIR API covers a lot of different domains in healthcare, including clinical and financial data. And we have 2 really useful national profiles in the US. We have US Core, which we've talked about a lot. Today, US Core version 1 is mostly focused on the clinical stuff, meds, problems, allergies. And then there's a set of FHIR profiles called the Karen Blue Button FHIR Implementation Guide, which describes how to share these healthcare financial data in a patient-facing way. Yeah. And so there's 2 or 3 key resources that are profiled in this implementation guide. There's the patient resource, which is going to be very similar to what you see in US Core. And then there's the coverage resource, which describes what type of insurance coverage a person has. And then there's the explanation of benefit resource, which describes, the actual benefits that an individual has received. And that's broken down into a few categories here. So there's inpatient explanations, outpatient explanations, pharmacy, and non-clinician. Those are each sort of modeled separately, but all four of these use the explanation of benefit resource. And so as an app, if you're connecting to a payer API, these are the kinds of queries that you expect to be able to make. You expect to be able to query for explanation of benefit resources from the FHIR server, for coverage resources, and for patients.
Got it. Can you send me this URL? Is that
possible? Yeah, of course. I'll put this.
And let me play around. And actually, if you go to that screen that had the definition of the explanation of benefits,
Yep, I'm just opening up.
Let me just quickly take a look. Yeah. Drill into one of these, like the explanation of benefits, inpatient, institutional, outpatient. This is fine.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to open up outpatient, institutional. And what you can see is this is going to be a profile on top of the FHIR EOB explanation of benefit resource.
Yeah.
And this page is still loading, so hold on a sec. There it goes.
And do they have? Let me look at what some of the fields are. Do they have the CPT codes and the diagnosis codes here?
Yeah, so I'm going to open up what's called a differential table. So this is going to show me what constraints have been added in this profile beyond the FHIR base type. So things like required fields, required coding systems, and so on are going to show up here. So if I'm looking at an explanation of benefit for one of these outpatient services, there's going to be a whole bunch of supporting info, which is includes terminology-based codes for what type of billing, what was the point of origin, what type of admission was it, what was the discharge status. It's going to include diagnoses, which are bound to ICD-9, ICD-10. It's going to include a specific set of items, each one of which is going to have one of these procedure codes, which is bound to CPT or HCPCS.
And the modifiers. So they do make these available. Well, they're claiming that they make them available.
Well, the profile requires that these things are supported. So this little red S here means the profile considers this element to be a must support element. So any payer that says they are compatible with this profile needs to be able to populate these modifiers.
Got it.
And
honestly, how can I confirm that? What's the best way to do it? Is it by actually writing code to that payer's endpoint and seeing if it's an Epic API, actually making the call, or is there another way? Much like as you spoke about the US CDI code data set, and the fact that if someone Epic supports it, so we know exactly what we're getting out of it.
Yeah.
How do we tell that?
I mean, the payers tend to have sandbox environments just like Epic does. So, one that I've used before in FHIR Connectathons has been the Humana FHIR sandbox. And so if you want to get a sense of how this works, this is analogous to what Epic does for clinical data. Humana has a sandbox where you can register an app and connect to their demo server for explanation of benefit and coverage resources. And this is pretty easy and straightforward to use, maybe even easier than connecting to the Epic sandbox, but it's a similar overall flow. And so you can try this out, and the resources that you get back from this server will probably meet these kinds of Karen explanation.
Have you ever made a call to the explanation of benefits API at Humana?
I have made a call to their insurance coverage endpoints, and I have queried their EOB endpoints, but I haven't done anything with the data.
I see. Well, can you do me a favor? If you do make a call again, can you look at that data set that you get back and maybe in an email cut and paste it for me so I can take a look?
Well, I probably won't do exactly that, but hopefully I can lead you to be able to see that information for yourself. Okay. First of all, if you want to understand the profiles a little better, there's examples that are built into the spec. That's this is just written by the specification authors, but it's often a good way to understand what data fields exist.
Yes.
You can browse through these JSON resources that are included in the spec.
That is fantastic.
You can see things like
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Got it. Okay, I'll take a look. I'll take
So
a look.
that's one data source. And then in the Humana sandbox, they do have just an API explorer that'll let you just sort of click through and see examples of the kinds of payloads that they return. So they do surface this in a way that you should be able to just click and browse.
And United has a similar thing, or Aetna and Cigna?
They should. Anybody who offers a like CMS Medicare Advantage plan needs to have something like this.
Yep, or any of the qualified health plans, right? Any of the exchange plans as well.
I think that's right, although I'm a little bit fuzzy on the details. There's some subset of payers who have this obligation and others don't. But any of the large payer organizations will have some plans in a category that does incur this obligation.
Yeah, so from what I remember, the regulations required that any payer that supports any of the government plans like Medicare or Medicaid and any of the qualified health plans. The definition of qualified health plans are the plans that are offered on the exchanges.
Yeah.
Federal and state exchanges. So
I think that's right. There may be some subtle details that need to be tweaked, but I think that's the right general understanding.
Yeah, got it. That's fantastic. I think that is good. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all your help, Josh.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do it.
If you can just send me whatever it was, the Karen HL.
Yeah, I'll put a set of the links that we talked about in the video description, and then I'll send you a link back up to it.
Perfect. Thank you so
much.
Awesome.
Yeah, happy to chat.
Take care, Naveen. When you are back in the Bay Area, look me up. I'd like to take you out for another great. We can have a good lunch or dinner together.
Awesome. Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Take care.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.